Welcome to the Dave Mierswa Show, the cutting-edge talk show about legal, political, and current issues. Practicing in both Wisconsin and Illinois, David Mierswa is a leading trial attorney bringing nearly 2 decades of business law, family law, personal injury, and estate planning experience to you. The Dave Mierswa Show, about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. The Dave Mierswa Show, its guests, agents, and WRLR are not rendering any legal advice. All listeners are encouraged to seek legal advice from properly licensed and qualified professionals.
Welcome to the Dave Mierswa Show. It is Sunday, 12 noon. You know what time that is. That's right. It's time to take a break from all the heat outside. And it's time to buckle in and tune in to the Dave Mierswa Show. I am your host, attorney Dave Mierswa. And you heard the intro. I've been a lawyer for almost 20 years now. I can't believe it. Hair's starting to go a little gray, but I tell you, I try to bring you hard-hitting topics, and I got a good one today. I got a doozy today of a radio show, as always. And I always start my show off getting my shout-outs out of the way. So usually I have like 30 PSAs to get out of the way, but today I don't have any PSAs to read. So hey, that gives me a couple more minutes to talk about my topics and what I do as far as this radio show goes. So, I've been on a mission to save as many animals as I can. And if you heard my show before, you know I talked about these two entities. And the first one is Reach Rescue. It's a non-for-profit, non-kill animal shelter located in Mundelein. So if you're out and about today and you want to do some good, why don't you stop by Reach Rescue? You can just Google them. Better yet, if you want to adopt an animal, I beg you, do not go to these breeders. Pick up an animal from an animal shelter so they can have a good life with you. Their number for rescue, 847-637-5661, 847-637-5661. And right next door to the animal rescue shelter is a resale shop. And that's how they make most of their money. All the people that work there are volunteers and do not get paid. Again, it is a non-for-profit. So if you got some stuff that you want to donate, get a tax deduction. If you feel that your home is not full of enough stuff, stop by there, buy some good stuff from them, and it all goes towards saving animals. Also, on Fairfield Road, on my way over, I always pass this place. It's called Save a Pet. They are located in Grays Lake. Once again, folks, I beg you, if you're looking at getting a dog or a cat, you know, stop by one of these animal shelters. Save a Pet, again, is a non-for-profit, and they have just rescued tens of thousands of animals. So I can't think of a higher cause today is to go in, do something good. You can get out, enjoy the weather, stop by, donate some money. Better yet, stop by and visit the pets there. They can always use that. And you can also bring them food. Go to their website and you can donate food as well. Okay, so those are my two shout outs today. And I'm on a mission today to try to make it the best show possible. As always, I strive every Sunday to bring you cutting-edge topics that a lot of people are afraid to talk about in public. I will debate any topic, and anyone has any suggestions, you can go to my website to contact me. Go to law540.com, law540.com. This is a live show every Sunday, 12 noon. Looks like someone's calling in. But at this minute, I'm not going to answer that because I'm doing a live show. But you can contact me definitely through law540.com. All of my previous shows are uploaded to YouTube, so you can see my face on YouTube. Put a face to this voice out there. And if you heard the beginning of my show, it's a show about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. Let me say that again, the show about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. My topic today, last week I kind of left my issue of what topic I was going to leave kind of open all week long. And then last Thursday, one of the biggest things has happened around the world, and that was the United Kingdom, the UK leaving the EU, which is just incredible. And historically, the EU, which is the European Union, was really formed many, many years ago. Let me give you a little bit of a history in this. And again, for some of you listeners just tuning in, I'm going to talk about today the UK, the United Kingdom, leaving the EU. And this is huge. They've spent many, many decades trying to form the EU, which is the second biggest economic bloc in the world besides the United States and all of the states. And the implications of this are global, none of the less. So let me bring up my notes here. I'll give you a little bit of background on the EU. Okay, so the EU was formed many, many years ago. Right now, it has 28 member states, basically nations. And it has a coalition of over 28 nations, minus one since last Thursday. It covers 7.3%. It covers 7.3% of the world's population. That's pretty big. It has a gross domestic product of 18.49 trillion. That's pretty substantial. The United States has about $4 to $5 trillion. So you can understand, how big this is, their GDP. And we may have a bigger GDP than that. Don't have that in my notes. But also some of the other history of this. Let me bring this up here. Oh, let's see. The European Union was forming out of World War II, and also 1948 they started the Hague Congress, and it eventually transformed into the EU. And in let's see what my notes say here. Got to scroll down here. It takes a couple minutes. Okay, some of the members that are part of this EU: Denmark, Greenland, Ireland, United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, Greece. What else do we have here? Looks like Germany. Germany was unified in 1990, and it looks like Germany as one unit in one country became part of the EU. And the EU issued its own currency. And this is kind of an interesting fact that Britain was allowed to retain its main currency called the pound. So all these other countries were striving to get into the EU. And here are some other countries that are part of the EU. Austria, Finland, Sweden, Hungary, Latvia, Poland, looks like Slovenia, Romania, Bulgaria, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. So there's other countries as well. I don't have time to go over all that. But that just tells you that this EU has really been in the making for years and years and years. And recently, we've all heard about Greece. Greece and Spain and some of the other EU countries are really falling into financial crisis, and that means that their GDP can't cover all the debts, and they need the IMF, and which is a International Monetary Fund, that help restore Greece's financial structure. Greece was about to collapse in on itself, and guess who was paying for a lot of this debt? It was Germany. It was Spain. They were paying for Spain, but some of the other members of the EU were getting tired of paying more exorbitant taxes to pay for the countries of Greece and Spain. And that was Germany, France, and England, and the UK, which was just paying an exorbitant amount for these countries that didn't have any fiscal responsibility. So this is huge. Let's say in the last 150 years, let me put this in the perspective of what this means of UK leaving the EU. It is paramount to historical facts as World War I, World War II, I would say Korea, the Vietnam War, and that's how historical this is. So that is kind of the historical background. And this past week, the currency, the pound, dropped 10%. And the pound had 1.5, 1.6. So it only dropped 10%. They were predicting it would drop 20, 30, 40%, and it didn't. It only dropped 10%. And the Dow Jones was down 610 points and closed this last week of around 17,300, 400, and it could have bounced back a little bit on Friday. I didn't catch the final figures. The NASDAQ was down 202 points and closed out about 4,700. So they kept saying all this doom and gloom if England was going to leave the EU. And it just didn't happen. Yeah, there was a little bit of a financial adjustment, but on what they were talking, it was kind of minor. So I want to get into my first audio clip here. Here is Barack Obama, President Obama, 2 months ago, about UK leaving the EU. And this is with Prime Minister David Cameron. And they did a news concert 2 months ago. President Obama went to the UK to basically lecture the people of the United Kingdom and how they should remain into the EU. Basically trying to interfere and state his opinion and treat the citizens of the UK basically like children. And President Obama is basically treating Americans as little children as well. And he thinks that he knows better than all of us Americans. But anyway, let me play the next audio clip so you can understand what I'm talking about.
From ITV News. Mr. President, you yourself acknowledged the controversial timing of your comments on the EU referendum and the spirited debate that we're having here. And I think you're right. In the weeks before your arrival here, Leave campaigners have said that you're acting hypocritically. America would not accept the loss of sovereignty that we have to accept as part of the EU. America would not accept the levels of immigration from Mexico that we have to accept from the EU. And therefore, in various degrees of politeness, they have said to you that you should really keep your views to yourself. With that in mind, Mr. President, do you still think it was the right decision to intervene in this debate? And can I ask you this, crucially, what happens if the UK does decide in June to leave the European Union?
Well, first of all, let me repeat. This is a decision for the people of the United Kingdom to make. I'm not coming here to fix any votes. I'm not casting a vote myself. I'm offering my opinion. And in democracies, everybody should want more information, not less. And you shouldn't be afraid to hear an argument being made. That's not a threat. That should enhance the debate. Particularly because my understanding is that some of the folks on the other side have been ascribing to the United States certain actions we'll take if the UK does leave the EU. So they say, for example, that, well, we'll just cut our own trade deals with the United States. So they're voicing an opinion about what the United States is going to do. I figured you might want to hear from the President of the United States what I think the United States is going to do. And on that matter, for example, I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-US trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue. Not because we don't have a special relationship, but because given the heavy lift on any trade agreement, us having access to a big market.
Did you hear those words? He's basically saying that England and the United Kingdom will have to be at the back of the queue or back of the room. Like a little child being sent to the back of the room in the corner for doing something that may or may not be right. Let me just back up. I want you to hear that again. In the audacity of our president to treat the citizens of England, which is a sovereign nation. Let me cue you again on that. It blows me away that he goes over there and has the audacity to lecture the people that are of a sovereign nation. Let me just back up here 1 second so you can hear that again.
So they're voicing an opinion about what the United States is going to do. I figured you might want to hear from the President of the United States what I think the United States is going to do. And on that matter, for example, I think it's fair to say that maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-US trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue. Not because we don't have a special relationship, but because given the heavy lift on any trade agreement, us having access to a big market with a lot of countries rather than trying to do piecemeal trade agreements is hugely inefficient.
Okay, so I backed up a little bit, and did you hear that? The insultive nature of his words, that they will have to be back in the queue because we are going to focus on the bigger EU, which is just atrocious, that language. And it seems to be the pattern of the presidency for the last 7.5 years, thinking he knows what's good for all of us U.S. citizens. And, I'm not going to play the rest of the clip, but that's the main thing that made the news with me. And, Barack was predicting, President Obama was predicting that the UK would not leave the EU. He got that dead wrong. And Hillary was backing the same thing. She got that dead wrong. Here is David Cameron on the UK vote and what he had to say about it. Let me cue this up so you can hear. And by the way, he's the Prime Minister, at least for the next 2 or 3 months of the United Kingdom.
We should be proud of the fact that in these islands, we trust the people with these big decisions. We not only have a parliamentary democracy, but on questions about the arrangements for how we're governed, there are times when it is right to ask the people themselves, and that is what we have done. The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected. I want to thank everyone who took part in the campaign on my side of the argument, including all those who put aside party differences to speak in what they believed was the national interest. And let me congratulate all those who took part in the Leave campaign for the spirited and passionate case that they made. The will of the British people is an instruction that must be delivered. It was not a decision that was taken lightly, not least because so many things were said by so many different organisations about the significance of this decision. So there can be no doubt about the result. Across the world, people have been watching the choice that Britain has made. I would reassure those markets and investors that Britain's economy is fundamentally strong. And I would also reassure Brits living in European countries and European citizens living here that there will be no immediate changes in your circumstances. There will be no initial change in the way our people can travel, in the way our goods can move, or the way our services can be sold. We must now prepare for a negotiation with the European Union. This will need to involve the full engagement of the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland governments to ensure that the interests of all parts of our United Kingdom are protected and advanced. But above all, this will require strong, determined and committed leadership. I'm very proud and very honoured to have been Prime Minister of this country for 6 years. I believe we've made great steps, with more people in work than ever before in our history, with reforms to welfare and education, increasing people's life chances, building a bigger and stronger society, keeping our promises to the poorest people in the world, and enabling those who love each other to get married whatever their sexuality. But above all, restoring Britain's economic strength. And I'm grateful to everyone who's helped to make that happen. I've also always believed that we have to confront big decisions, not duck them. That is why we delivered the first coalition government in 70 years to bring our economy back from the brink. It's why we delivered a fair, legal and decisive referendum in Scotland. And it's why I made the pledge to renegotiate Britain's position in the European Union and to hold a referendum on our membership, and have carried those things out. I fought this campaign in the only way I know how, which is to say directly and passionately what I think and feel, head, heart and soul. I held nothing back. I was absolutely clear about my belief that Britain is stronger, safer and better off inside the European Union. And I made clear the referendum was about this and this alone, not the future of any single politician, including myself. But the British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. This is not a decision I've taken lightly, but I do believe it's in the national interest to have a period of stability and then the new leadership required. There is no need for a precise timetable today, but in my view we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October. Delivering stability will be important, and I will continue in post as Prime Minister with my Cabinet for the next 3 months. The Cabinet will meet on Monday. The Governor of the Bank of England is making a statement about the steps that the Bank and the Treasury are taking to reassure financial markets. We will also continue taking forward the important legislation that we set before Parliament in the Queen's speech. And I've spoken to Her Majesty the Queen this morning to advise her of the steps that I'm taking. A negotiation with the European Union will need to begin under a new Prime Minister. And I think it's right that this new Prime Minister takes the decision about when to trigger Article 50 and start the formal and legal process of leaving the EU. I will attend the European Council next week to explain the decision the British people have taken and my own decision.
So that was David Cameron, who's Prime Minister of UK, and he decided to step down after that vote. He's not going to step down until probably October. And if you know anything about English history, they have a parliamentary democracy where the coalition of their parliament elects the president, and that's the difference between the United States democracy and the English democracy, whereas the executive branch of the government is a complete and separate branch. And we purposely made the United States based on that. You know, the founding members and the founding fathers thought that the Congress had too much power central around their parliament. So they decided to break out the president into the executive branch, which is, I could do 50 shows on that. So that was David Cameron stating that he's going to stay on a little while, and he's trying to cool things down, which really needs to be, and to stabilize the financial markets. And here is another audio clip. Here are EU foreign ministers talking about UK leaving the EU. So this is kind of a shorter clip.
Foreign ministers from the 6 founding members of the EU have hurriedly assembled in Berlin to thrash out a response to Britain's vote to leave. British Prime Minister David Cameron said hours after the result that he'll resign and let his successor negotiate the divorce. Brexit is the biggest blow to the EU's project of forging greater unity so far. Not surprising then that Germany's foreign minister appealed for calm. We must not resort to hectic activity and act as if all the answers are ready. But after the British decision, we mustn't lapse into depression and inactivity. The Dutch foreign minister warned of the dangers of a political vacuum to the bloc. And he also urged for speedy divorce negotiations.
I don't think the Euroscepticism or the views on Europe in my country are very different from others. People have to see the results of Europe. I think that's key. But we need to turn the page. We don't want a vacuum. And it's important now that these negotiations with the United Kingdom start in good faith, but as soon as possible.
There could also be further breakups in Europe, with the nationalist leader of Scotland, where nearly 2/3 of voters wanted to stay in the EU, saying a new referendum on independence from the rest of Britain was highly likely.
So those were some of the foreign ministers of the 6 or 7 founding members of the EU. And it basically, what I can analogize this to, it's like a divorce. And this is where, everyone thought that everyone was going to remain together, but, one spouse decided to leave the other spouse and then surprised everyone. But it wasn't a surprise to
At our new time, Tuesdays, 3 to 5 p.m. on WRLR 98.3 FM.
In a nutshell.
Join WRLR's father and son co-hosts David and Joshua Jakes on Casting Blast every Saturday morning from 7 to 8. You'll hear the best hunting and fishing information designed for the local outdoor enthusiasts. Listen along with the family to the Youth Corner. Discover ideas that help encourage the next generation of sportsmen and women explore the great outdoors for the first time. Casting Blast, Saturdays, 7 to 8 a.m. on WRLR 98.3 FM.
Welcome to the Dave Mierswa Show, the cutting-edge talk show about legal, political, and current issues. Practicing in both Wisconsin and Illinois, David Mierswa is the leading trial attorney, bringing nearly 2 decades of business law, family law, personal injury, and estate planning experience to you. The Dave Mierswa Show, about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. The Dave Mierswa Show, its guests, agents, and WRLR are not rendering any legal advice. All listeners are encouraged to seek legal advice from properly licensed and qualified professionals.
Welcome back to the Dave Mierswa Show. I'm your host, Dave Mierswa. If you're just tuning in, you are tuning in to the Dave Mierswa Show. I have been talking about the UK leaving the EU, the European Union. And, historically, at the beginning of my show, I talked about that historically, this is one of the biggest events that is going to happen as far as international economics go, finance and political issues. And as far as this goes, this is as big as World War I, World War II, I would say Korea, I would say China taking over Hong Kong, which it's one of these events that happens once every 100 years, 150, 200 years. And I tell you why. Because for the last 50, 60 years, all these European countries wanted to emulate the United States and how we have free trade and all that. And one of the things that they've been working on was, for 50, 60 years after World War II, they wanted to have open borders, free trade, one currency, and doesn't that sound exactly like the United States? And so they've been negotiating this basically before World War II, and they just couldn't agree upon it. And then finally, the European Union came together as an economic bloc. But here's one of the things that's going on over there that parallels what's going on here in the United States. You have a minority of some of these countries that have overspent. They have set up their governments where they're giving out so many payouts, and every 5 or 10 years they go back to the EU and they go back to the IMF and they ask for more loans and restructuring, and then financially they kick the can down the road. And recently this was happening in Greece, and some of the stronger economies were bailing out all these other economies that were overspending, and they could not meet their financial obligations. And recently, that was last summer and last fall, was Greece. And here, I think England and the English people have had enough, and all the United Kingdom, all of their citizens have had enough of bailing out these other fiscally irresponsible countries. So they voted to establish once again to have their borders in security, to take over the political decisions that the EU was making for them. And I think that this is going to be, huge and historical. So I can't state that enough. So let me shut up here. Let me play my next clip, which is President Obama after the vote. Let's see what he has to say, and then I'll make a few comments on it.
Speaking to a gathering of global entrepreneurs in California, President Barack Obama struck a measured tone.
I do think that yesterday's vote speaks to the ongoing changes and challenges that are raised by globalization. But while the UK's relationship with the EU will change, one thing that will not change is the special relationship that exists between our two nations. That will endure.
It was very different from his comments back in April while visiting the UK. Then he said the British would be, quote, at the back of the queue in any bilateral trade negotiations if they voted to leave. It was a comment that led to accusations of political interference in the vote. Hillary Clinton released a statement saying she respected the choice of UK voters and stressed her steadfast commitment to what she called the special relationship with Britain and Europe. However, it's been reported her campaign has long feared that any domestic US economic blowback from a leave vote will give the Republican Party's presumptive presidential nominee Donald Trump an advantage in November's election. Trump himself was in Scotland on a business trip to one of his golf courses. He welcomed the results of the vote and explicitly tied it to the themes of his presidential campaign.
I really do see a parallel between what's happening in the United States and what's happening here. People want to see borders. They don't necessarily want people pouring into their country that they don't know who they are and where they come from.
Back in Palo Alto, the view was one of surprise at the British voters' decision.
We're worried about the kind of chaos that can happen.
So once again, you heard some of the audio clips. This was an audio clip from our president, and did you notice the tone in his voice? Very monotone, and he's not even humble about it. And it's like he can't stand it. He's made so many incalculations, and this is one of many that his administration has done. Let's hear what Donald Trump has to say about what happened in England.
Okay, guess where Donald Trump is? The UK, in Scotland at his golf course. He took a moment to congratulate the British people for retaking control of their country.
I really do see a parallel between what's happening in the United States and what's happening here. People want to see borders. They don't necessarily want people pouring into their country that they don't know who they are and where they come from. They have no idea. And
I think, it not only did it win, but it won by a much bigger margin than people thought it would happen. I think it could very well turn out to be a positive. Nobody really knows. You'll know in about 5 years. You'll be able to analyze it, and maybe it'll take even longer than that. But what is known is that they've taken back their independence. And that's a very, very important thing.
Their standing in the world, their standing in Europe will certainly be diminished. Their influence will be diminished. Will they still be the first call for you, for the U.S.?
Well, look, I don't know, first call or second call. There'll be a very powerful call. It's going to be a great relationship. There'll be great allies. They always have been. And I think zero will change on that score. There's never been a better ally, and I think nothing will change on that score. You're taking your country back. You're going to let people that you want into your country. And people that you don't want, or people that you don't think are going to be appropriate for your country or good for your country, you're not going to have to take. And, look, Europe, like the United States, has made tremendous mistakes over the last period of time. You look at Germany, you look at some of the things that are happening, there have been tremendous mistakes that have been made. So I think it's going to end up being a very good thing, but it'll take time.
What do you think this says about how Hillary Clinton maybe has misread the world, and since she's a former Secretary of State, what does that say about her?
Well, she's always misread everything. I mean, if you think, she's misread this, and I was surprised that she was so bold and to say, well, the only reason she did it is because Obama wanted it. If Obama wanted the other way, if he said leave, she would have said leave. She does whatever he wants her to do. Now, you know why, but that's okay. We don't have to get into that. But I was actually very surprised that President Obama would have come over here and he would have been so bold as to tell the people over here what to do. In the United States, the people want their country back. In the United States, people want smart decisions, not dumb decisions. And we've been given dumb decisions for many years, and the people are tired of it. And I have a feeling the same thing has happened over here, and that's why you had the result that you had.
Okay, that was an audio clip by Fox News. So there is an investor side to this. We do a lot of business with the United Kingdom. We do a lot of business with the EU. So let's hear about investors in the UK on Fox Business News to see what their take is on this.
Few money managers are with me now. Moderately bullish, Jonas Max Ferris, and short-term bear, Ty Young. Welcome to you both. Glad to have you on such an important day. Ty, as our short-term bear, why no bargain hunting today? If somebody wants to own a stock, this was a great day to pick it up.
Let me first say this. It warms my heart that the British people voted for independence today. They voted for freedom today, and it was a rebuke of socialism. And Prime Minister Cameron and Barack Obama, President Obama, have egg on their face as a result of it. Market's down 600, more than 600 points for the day. And to go in and buy stocks here, to me, is kind of like trying to catch the proverbial falling knife. Sometimes you do it, but most of the time you get hurt.
All right, but in general, you'll agree that the U.S. is still the cleanest dirty shirt in the closet, right?
Oh, there's no question about it. We have the greatest markets in the world and the greatest currency in the world, and we saw that today when we saw the flight for safety. The dollar got very, very strong, as you pointed out, as we were about to come on here. Gold was up very, very large. There was a flight to structured products today as well. We noticed that. So yeah, it is the cleanest dirty shirt in the room, to use your vernacular there.
All right, Jonas, I want to bring you in because one of my guests earlier, I was participating in a few programs today, said, why is there such broad-based selling? The UK voted to leave the EU. The UK did not vote to leave planet Earth. There has to be something here that is worthy of an investor's time and attention.
Right, because it's not a rebuke of socialism, it's a rebuke of capitalism. If it was a rebuke of socialism, the stock market would have gone up, the pound would be at Miami Vice level, was what we saw today.
So that was kind of a different take. You heard that it was a rebuke of socialism. Then he had another investor say it was a rebuke on capitalism. So only time's going to tell. But there are some certain things that the citizens of United Kingdom are after. And I think that they are tired of the globalization. I think they are tired of their jobs going to other parts of Europe. I think that the citizens are tired of people coming in their country. They don't know who they are. They've also been subject to terrorist attacks, and they're tired of not having security at their borders, which this is going to reestablish. And you heard Trump talk about the parallels between America and the United Kingdom, and which is real interesting. And there was a side note that he's really talked about these issues on point, and a lot of these issues would not even have been mentioned in politics but for Trump. Whatever you think of him, a lot of these issues are now in the forefront. Let's hear what German Prime Minister Merkel has to say about the leaving of the United Kingdom from EU.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said she deeply regrets the British vote to leave the EU, but she says Europe needs to remain calm and composed in the wake of the UK's exit.
Der heutige Tag ist ein Einschnitt für Europa.
Today is a blow for Europe. It's a blow for the process of European unification. What the consequences of this blow will be in the next few days, weeks, months and years is entirely dependent on whether we, the other 27 members of the European Union, can show ourselves willing and able not to jump to conclusions in this situation and not to draw instant and simple conclusions from the referendum in Great Britain, which would only divide Europe further.
In dieser Situation keine schnellen und einfachen Schlüsse aus dem Referendum in Großbritannien zu ziehen, die Europa nur weiter spalten würden.
Merkel has invited senior EU leaders to Berlin for talks on Monday. Donald Tusk, Matteo Renzi and François Hollande. The French president said he deeply regretted Britain's choice.
Aujourd'hui, c'est l'histoire qui frappe à notre porte.
Today, history is knocking at our door. What's at stake is the dilution of Europe, which closes in on itself, or the reaffirmation of its existence at the cost of profound change.
De changement profond. Je ferai tout pour que ce soit le changement.
So that was Prime Minister Merkel of Germany, calling for calm amongst all the other 27 nations that belong to the EU. And there were some other audio clips out there that I'm not going to have time to play, but basically a lot of the other member states of the EU want to punish England, and they want to get the divorce over as fast as possible, while a lot of the other countries, some of the other founding members of the EU, want to slow everything down, which I think is wise. There is no way you could unwind 30, 40, 50 years of trade and all that, and it's not going to be good for the market. So there has to be a calm approach to diversing and breaking up of England and from the EU, and that would include the economics, the legal system, the immigration, and the borders, and that would have to take time. Meanwhile, England's going to have to renegotiate a lot of their trade deals, one-on-one, and also they're still going to be part of Europe. They just want to get their country back. Let's hear what the Scottish Prime Minister has to say about the UK leaving the EU.
However, when the Article 50 process is triggered in 3 months' time, the UK will be on a 2-year path to the EU exit door. If Parliament judges that a second referendum is the best or only way to protect our place in Europe, it must have the option to hold one within that timescale. That means we must act now to protect that position. I can therefore confirm today that in order to protect that position, we will begin to prepare the legislation that would be required to enable a new independence referendum to take place if and when Parliament so decides. To conclude, this is not a situation that I wanted Scotland or the UK to be in today. But my responsibility in a climate of uncertainty is to seek to lead us forward with purpose. I know that there is a lot of thinking and talking to be done in the period that lies ahead and before final decisions are taken. The issues that we face are complex. There are many people who voted against independence in 2014 who are today reassessing their decision. Indeed, a very large number of them have contacted me already. However, I know that they will not want me to simply assume their support or to hear me talk about the challenges we face as if they are straightforward. They will want me to be straight and honest with them. Now is the time for me as First Minister to do everything I can to bring people together in common cause and to seek to lead our country forward as one. The need to act decisively must be tempered with the need to build consensus, and it will be. That is my duty as First Minister. After a campaign that has been characterised in the rest of the UK by fear and hate, my priority in the days, weeks and months ahead will be to act at all times in the best interests of Scotland and in a way that unites, not divides us. And let me also be clear about this. Whatever happens as a result of this outcome, England, Wales and Northern Ireland will always be Scotland's closest neighbours and our best friends. Nothing will ever change that. But I want to leave no one in any doubt about this. I am proud of Scotland and how we voted yesterday. We proved that we are a modern, outward-looking, open and inclusive country. And we said clearly that we do not want to leave the European Union. I am determined that we will do what it takes to make sure that these aspirations are realised. In closing, let me just say a word or two about the Prime Minister. David Cameron and I have very many political disagreements, not least over the conduct of this referendum. But as I am learning every single day, leadership is not easy. David has been the Prime Minister of the UK for 6 years. It is a tough job, and whatever our disagreements, he deserves our thanks for his service. I wish him and his family well for the future. With these comments, I'm happy to take some questions. Glenn Campbell.
First Minister, if not an independence referendum, what other options are available to you?
Well, I think an independence referendum is now highly likely, but I also think it's important that we take time to consider all steps and to have the discussions, not least to assess the response of the European Union to the vote that Scotland expressed yesterday. I am absolutely determined in my responsibility to give effect to how Scotland voted yesterday, and it's important that I take all steps to make sure that we explore all options to do exactly that. Colin.
Is that independence referendum that you say is highly likely, will that go ahead with or without consent of Westminster? Because you had consent the last time.
Well, obviously we would seek to follow the same precedent that we did the last time, but I think in the circumstances where the Scottish Parliament decides that that option is an option that it wants to exercise, I think it would be inconceivable that, particularly in the circumstances that have given rise to this, that the UK government would seek to stand in its way. But of course these are some of the discussions that we will be seeking to have in the days and weeks ahead. I'll take Peter.
First Minister, if you say you want Scotland to remain in the EU, you say that to do that you're likely to propose a referendum. The rest of the UK will be out of the EU. That must mean there will be a border between Scotland, a proper, real border between Scotland and England.
These are issues that we now have to assess and consider, and we have to do that calmly and rationally. That's why I have said very, very clearly in the remarks I've made today that I am not going to stand here and pretend to anybody that the issues we face are straightforward. We face many complex issues, which is another reason why, in addition to being determined about giving effect to how Scotland voted, I'm going to take the time to make sure that all of Scotland considers all of these issues and has the chance to move forward as one. I think that is of the utmost importance at this time. Sarah.
So that was an audio clip from the Prime Minister of Scotland, and I gotta say, I gotta love their accents. That alone made that probably one of the best audio clips on the show today. So I got a couple minutes here and I gotta wrap up the show. So, today you heard from many perspectives on the UK leaving the EU. And, It arises from the discontent of the government of the United Kingdom and really not listening and reflecting what the people want. I got to say that David Cameron ended his political career and called for the referendum on leaving the EU. And basically, I don't think it's going to end his political career totally, but he abided by a referendum and vote. And that is democracy from its finest. And I think this November is going to be a referendum on the United States and the politics and where this country is going to be leaded for the next 50 to 60 years. So make no mistake about it. The next election this November is going to set the Supreme Court. And there was just a case that came down on President Obama's immigration. It was tied 4-4. So anyway, I got to end the show. I am out of here for this Sunday, and I hope everyone enjoyed the show today. I thought it was very enlightening, switching from American politics to kind of going to more of some global issues here. So I hope everyone has a great Sunday. I will be back live next Sunday at 12 noon. Have a great day. Take care of yourself and your family now.